Vampire Survivors, Ghosts, Horizon Zero Dawn, the board game. This is staying in. I don't know how to break it to you. I don't even know if this will go in the podcast, but
good start.
I realised I had one of these.
Oh, is it a little hard drive?
It's a 1 terabyte SSD hard drive.
All right, okay, cool.
So I have one of these kicking around.
What's on it?
Nothing. I bought it brand new and then forgot I had it, and then.
Oh, Moneybags Wellington.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And one of the reasons I bought it is because in the year of our Lord 2023. I've decided that I'm going to rip all of my CDs using Windows Media Player and put them onto my hard drive because I don't know some strange compulsion, and then put the actual CDs themselves up into the loft and rip all of the DVDs that I have because got a few.
Can you still do that? I feel like that's like such an old-fashioned thing that actually just computers forgot how to do that now.
Yeah.
Like they dropped that feature a while back because who was still doing it?
What sort of person even has a CD drive anymore? So, if at some point you hit a Windows key on your keyboard and type in music, it has like 2 players. There are actually 2 things on Windows 10 that will do exactly the same thing.
Is it Groove? It's like Windows Media Player and then Groove?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Groove Music and Windows Media Player. And I've got it to the point now where I can just put a disc in, it rips it, splits it automatically back out. I chuck another disc in. I can put in a copy of the Cardigans Gran Turismo that rips it, spits it back out. Put in No FX Punkin' Drum Lick, rips it, spits it back out. Linkin Park's Hybrid Theory, rips it, spits it out. Like really cutting edge music.
And at what point did your mum tell you to go to bed?
yeah. I can't. I'm trying to get my Winamp settings sorted.
Because Pete, I stayed at yours, and there was like a kind of a bit of a COVID scare. We weren't sure if we had COVID, so I was waiting.
A worry
to be able to leave my house to go and see my partner on the outcome of your COVID result. And I messaged you at night, 9:25 in the morning, saying, "Have you tested yet? Are you okay, buddy?"
Yeah.
I heard nothing from you.
Yeah.
And for the whole day, and I was like, "Oh gosh, he must have gone down with it. It must have hit him really hard." Until I got a text to you about like 3:30, 4 o'clock in the afternoon. No, actually, I think it was about 5, saying, "Sorry, mate, ripping CDs all day."
Yeah. I mean, you're lucky I didn't message you on MSN Messenger to tell you that fact, to be honest.
I really don't blame you. Like, I was at my in-laws the other day, and I kid you not, we had a 30-minute discussion about how to access the first 7 seasons of Doc Martin on the streaming on a streaming service, and like because we were talking, and my wife's mum was just like, "Oh, I really want to watch Doc Martin from the start," like you do.
Yeah, of course. I mean, every true red-blooded British person decides that they want to watch the series.
It doesn't make sense otherwise.
Yeah,
I know. Yeah, exactly. And just like I just can't find it on any of the streaming services. And I was like, I did a cursory look online. It's like, well, it's available on BritBox. And I'm like, yeah, but BritBox is now ITVX, but they haven't. ITVX don't have all the current catalogue of BritBox. You can get the current catalogue of BritBox through the Amazon Prime Video app. And they were like, well, but how do I do that one? And like, I thought we weren't there yet, but it appears like we've already reached saturation point in terms of where is my media and on what device. And to add to that, Warner Brothers just walking around going, yeah, delete that. What's that? Delete that. Westworld? No one likes that. Delete that. Never heard of it. Get rid of that. Like, I do not blame you one. Like, I am really now coveting the fact that I've got all 5 seasons of The Wire still on DVD. And I'm seriously thinking about investing in some way to get other things I like on some sort of media that I know I can keep and have, because I do not trust any service, because A, there's people going around with too much money just deleting stuff they don't understand and don't like, and B, I think the streaming bubble is going to burst a lot sooner than possibly many of us expected.
So I was looking into there's a brilliant piece of software called Plex, and basically with Plex the whole point of it is that you can stream from a device, usually a computer or a network or something like that, and you can stream it to any device that you've got, and it kind of works like Netflix, except it's the Netflix that you've made out of your own files, and obviously I'm sure there are some cheeky people who go and get those dodgily off some website, but honestly, the easiest thing you can do is just rip a DVD that you have of your own and chuck it up onto there as an MP4 file. And you can stream it around the house and flawlessly, and it works brilliantly,
Watching a movie in the kitchen, move to the living room, still there, move
Still
upstairs,
there.
still there.
Every room's got a projector in it.
Exactly.
Yeah, now you know why there was a TV in the bathroom, Chris.
Yeah, you sit on the toilet and then a screen lowers from the ceiling automatically.
So, that's really, really good. But one of the other things that it offers at the moment that I didn't realise because I hadn't used it for a little while, and I was looking into it when I was ripping all my copies of Raised Fists album Dedication.
Oh my gosh.
They now have a thing whereby you can search for a piece of content on Plex, and it will tell you exactly which streaming platform that content exists on, and then direct you immediately to go and use that streaming platform.
Oh, brilliant.
It's really good.
There is another app that does that, weirdly, which I'm assuming you can only get on Apple devices, and it's actually the Apple TV app. If you type in, as we're talking here, I've just typed in Doc Martin, and it's come up saying that it's on ITVX. Right. So if I'm ever wondering for something, I'll always type it in, and it'll always bring it up, because if it's not on a service, you can download it from them. You can rent it or buy it or stuff like that. But I use the Apple TV thing, even though this is just the app. I'm not subscribed to Apple TV at the moment. But it'll search through it, and it'll tell you, yes, it's on Netflix, and click this and it'll open up your Netflix app and stuff like that.
I think the Amazon Fire Stick does something similar.
It's fascinating because that feels like one of the horsemen of the streaming apocalypse of a service which tells you which other services you can get that content on. Because can you imagine back in the day where all the discussions around things like Netflix were like, wow, it's just so convenient to have everything in one place.
Well, that's basically what Apple are trying. Don't get me wrong. This isn't a new app. This is quite old app now, but that's what they're trying to do, is be that one-stop shop. I just purely use it for the convenience of, where's Parks and Rec now? Oh, it's on there. Okay.
Oh, it's on there. I'll sign up for another streaming service.
It's on Freevee.
Yeah. Yay.
Which used to be IMDb TV, but is now Freevee. And remember, Doc Martin fans, only series 8 and 9 are on ITVX. So,
oh my
It's a shame. Do you reckon we'll ever get that Wire Doc Martin crossover they've been mooting? Martin Clunes in Baltimore.
I was going to say, is it Doc Martin in Baltimore, or is it Detective McNulty on the streets of Whitby, or wherever it was? Where was it?
I don't know. I've never watched it.
I went there. I went to go and visit there. Not like on a Doc Martin pilgrimage. It was close to where my brother was getting married, and we were walking down the streets, and I was just like, "This is some of the buildings that you may have seen in the ITV series Doc Martin." It was lovely. Almost lost my child there as well, which is great story.
Almost a Doc Martin story, isn't it? That.
Can I tell you of one of my pleasures of an evening most recently?
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah.
It depends on what you're going to say.
We do use a clean tag on this podcast, so yeah.
I mean, I am in bed.
All right, going in the wrong direction already, but yeah, let's go.
And I'm utilising 2 of my wonderful gifts I got for Christmas. Okay. One of which was a V pillow from my brother-in-law.
You're going to have to explain what a V pillow is, because that sounds to me like...
that sounds like a virtual pillow.
Hang on, isn't it like a V pillow some of the pregnant women have?
It sounds to me like you might find an anime character on it, but let's find out.
Exactly. Out of everyone on this call, I expected you not to be the person I needed to explain what a V pillow is. A V pillow is just a pillow in the shape of a V. And yes, Dan, you are kind of right. Pregnant women can use it as a reliever. It's not the prime, a bump wedge is very much just for pregnant women. But a V pillow has multiple different uses. Yes, you can have it in between your gusset as a back stress reliever, which is sometimes what I do when I get a bit of a bad back. Take the pressure off, slip my V pillow in, and then cuddle one of the Vs.
Your choice of words is impressive.
But primarily, it's just when you're sitting up in bed, it's a V shape. Both me and my wife now have one, so we now have a W bed or an M bed, depending on which way they're pointed. So you have like the base of the V behind your neck, and then you have the two lines of the V running down your sternum, so supporting you as you're doing stuff in bed, like reading.
Like a life jacket.
We have spent an inordinate amount of time on this podcast talking about your new pillow.
I know, but they're incredible, Dan. And then when you go to sleep, you turn on your side and you can just snuggle into one of the braces.
To be fair, I did recently get a memory foam Emma pillow, so I've also changed my
they're
pillow
incredible.
habits.
Is that like a giant E, Dan?
Yes. It's in the shape of woman.
That's exciting.
So what I do is, now I go to bed.
Is this another hack, Sam?
No, I have my V pillow placed behind my head, and then I slip in underneath my pillow by other excellent present that I got from my wife for Christmas, which is something called a Sonny Sleep. It's basically like a pill, what I would describe as like a pill sound bar. So it's a sound bar that looks a little bit like a pill. I think that was a Beats by Dre product.
Yeah.
But it's a very, very small sound bar.
Oh, I remember.
But instead of using acoustic speakers to transmit the sound, it uses bone conductive technology, which is both the biggest positive of it and the biggest letdown, because you have to be quite squashed into it to really get the sound to resonate. But the positive of that is that you're really not disturbing anyone that you're sharing the bed with, because the sound is only vibrating your skull, so only you can hear it. So now I've painted that picture and I've told you the tools that I'm using.
Yeah.
I reach down, I bring onto the bed my Steam Deck,
Yep.
and I load up my copy of Vampire Survivors.
Here we go.
And that's me.
We got there eventually.
And that's me for an evening, just twirling my thumbstick.
That sounds delightful. It's mad how Vampire Survivors was probably the best game of last year. Equal maybe only to Marvel Snap. I can't believe how little I wanted to get into this game, and then immediately, as soon as I started playing, I went, "Oh no, it's brilliant!"
Why? Because it looked like it would sap your time, or
it's the classic early access. It looks like on the outside, somebody who looks at a lot of games, it looks like the classic. Go get some assets that don't really mesh together at all well. Call the game early access, release it on Steam for very little money, and then combine a bunch of different genre keywords, roguelike, survival.
Yeah. I mean, it's not even got any vampires in it.
right.
Really.
But combining a bunch of these keywords together that are the classic indie, we're having a little try, and it just felt like. It just felt like I was just going to hate it, right?
Yeah.
But my God, what a game! It's the quintessentially brilliant version of an early access game, whereby they've whittled down the game to the barest minimum that it can possibly be, and just crafted it to a point where it's so enjoyable to play. So precise in its control, and then once they've got that down, they've gone, right, let's add a load of stuff. It's amazing. I don't know how to best describe it. I mean, roguelike bullet hell.
It's basically a bullet hell in reverse.
Can you explain that in layman's terms?
In bullet hell, you are essentially a pin. Right, so most bullet hell shooters, you're actually a little circle, and the character around that little circle that you're controlling, doesn't really count. You can actually rub that character up against anything. There's no hit detection there. It's just this tiny little pin on the screen. And these bullet hell games might be things like Escaluda, Radiant Silver Gun. What's the Ikaruga?
Yes.
Dodonpachi, those kinds of games. Whereas in those games, the main thing that you're trying to do is you are shooting enemies. They're usually vertical scrolling shooters and trying to chase high scores. But the main thing you're trying to do is really just survive, to get this pin through usually a screen that is just filled with bullets, usually. And that's why it's called a bullet hell shooter. It's kind of an offshoot of the side-scrolling shooters like R-Type and Gradius. So with Vampire Survivors, you still have your pin. You still have your character, who is essentially this teensy little pin in the middle, and you don't want to get hit by stuff because you've got a little health bar and it goes down every single time you get hit. You automatically shoot from the character. And you're moving around it's a 2D game, top-down, and you're moving around this plane, and you're essentially trying to go through graveyards and stuff like that. It's one big arena, essentially, that continues to scroll. And you automatically shoot enemies as they come towards you. And then pick up additional power-ups that power up your abilities. So you'll start with a magic wand, let's say, which shoots a single projectile. And then you might pick up another magic wand, and that will mean that you can shoot 2. You might pick up a third, and it might mean that that magic wand gets more powerful. It deals more damage each time, because the enemies also scale up with you. So they are getting more and more and more powerful as you are getting more and more and more powerful. And they're also getting more numerous. So the first thing that you see is like, maybe you got like 3 or 4 enemies coming after you for like a few seconds. Then you realize there's like 10, then 20. And by the end, the screen is just filled with enemies. And I mean filled with enemies. Like,
you can't see anything.
Yeah.
Because I think the thing that I find quite interesting about it strategically is that, yes, it's automatically shooting, but that's not a continuous burst. It's pulsing. And it's about timing it right so that when you encounter these enemies, it's at the time you know you're firing. That's the interesting kind of dance.
So with some of the weapons, yes.
Yeah.
So for example, with the knives that you throw out, yeah, absolutely. Some of them, they are just... some of them will be things like lightning strikes, which you don't really have that much control over where they go. So you're just wandering around and it kind of acts as an area of effect. Garlic, which is like, amazing. One of my favourite weapons in the game.
My main man, Poe.
Absolutely. My main man.
Pour one out for Pro.
He's not dead.
Has a radius. He has like
he dies a lot for me.
The garlic has a radius effect. So it's constantly active, or basically constantly active. But you have to know what these weapons do in order to get the maximum use out of them.
For me, that's the strategy.
Yeah.
Kris makes this noise where he is really on edge, where he kind of breathes in and goes,
Yeah.
And
it's a sound we all love.
Yeah.
You hear it a lot when he was playing Hot Wheels Unleashed.
Yeah. Can we hear the sound now, Kris?
Imagine that coming down the headset.
And the first early moments of Vampire Survivors, I was pretty much always making that sound. Like, I describe the first hours of Vampire Survivors as butt-clenchingly moreish.
Yeah.
Like, the amount of times you're just squeaking through a level, just trying to eke out another 10 or 20 seconds or even another minute onto your time, because each stage is time limited from 15 minutes to 30. And all you're literally just trying to do is survive. Then as the game goes on, you buy more power-ups which are persistent on your character. Suddenly the game becomes a lot simpler in terms of you got more health, you move a bit faster, your pickups are generally more powerful from the outset, you're gathering more experience with every kill. And then the game completely changes into this strategic idle game, almost like a cookie clicker, where all you're really doing is experimenting with builds and experimenting with actual, like, the structures of your character, and trying to, and this is the thing that surprises me the most about Vampire Survivors, is explore the world to find secrets in order to boost your weapons and boost your characters and improve your builds. And sometimes I just go in, I just feel like, right, I'm going to pick this starting character and I'm going to experiment with this weapon and see how far I can evolve it, how far I can upgrade it, or I'm going to experiment with these 2 weapons to see how they coexist with each other. And I love how that game just shifts over the course. Like I've played it for like 10 hours plus. Like I love how it shifts over the course of that game. So it doesn't just stay where it is. It evolves and it changed itself just over that time. I think it's masterful.
And there is still dexterous skill involved. It isn't simply a case of like you can just sit there and do nothing while the game goes on and like just think about what build it is that you need. You still need a bunch of skill to keep going with it, but those kinds of skills change. And actually, when you first play the game, your immediate reaction is run away from all the enemies as quickly as you possibly can, stay away from everything that you can, and you realise that actually the closest comparison I would give it is, do you ever play like Burnout 3 and like back in the day where like you'd play games where you'd get like a near miss? A lot of the game for me comes down to teetering on the edge between getting close enough to the enemies that you can pick up their the experience orbs that they chuck out, but stay far enough away so that if something unexpected happens, you can still react to it. And there's still moments late in the game where, you know, you're able to, you know, you will still have to thread the needle where you're really trying to move through like very large crowds of enemies and thinking, okay, I need to choose this power up next because basically there's no way I can survive this kind of stuff if I keep going this way.
I think I've had an interesting kind of experience of playing it, because you guys started playing it and you started kind of sharing kind of images on like our WhatsApp group. So I'd get these kind of images come up like game over, and it was like kind of like 20,000 enemies and it all looked crazy and all that. So I thought I'll have a go, and I started playing it, and like I thought I'd done quite well, and I finished. I look, okay, I got to level 23 and killed 1,000 enemies, and I looked at you guys and you were on like level 40. I'm like, oh, it's going to be another one of these games where I'm just not very good and I'm not going to really enjoy it. And then kind of, as you say, I started kind of getting to know a bit more of the weapons and understanding them a bit more, and realizing, for example, the garlic, like if you get that early, like you can stand still and like the enemies, the smaller enemies who come to you won't be able to get through. So you just be able to churn and grind your way through loads of the early levels just doing that. I think I got one point I tried it out and I got to like level 32 just standing still. At that point, kind of, I was getting overwhelmed at that point. And so I've kind of been playing it more and more. And I've been playing it a lot, and like the first time I realised you can complete a stage. There is an end point.
That was a revelation.
Up until that point, I just assumed it was just like, how high can you go? How long can you last?
Yeah.
And then it pops up saying stage completed. I was like, what? The more I found myself experimenting, I started understanding a bit more, and I was getting to like the levels that you guys were. I was like, okay, I'm getting this now. What it does brilliantly compared to Marvel Snap is the way it introduces new mechanics. Just as you are starting to kind of get tired of it, it says, okay, here's the hyper feature, which means certain things are going to change, and it changes again. Now here's Arcana, which is now you can have these special cards, which are going to change the way the game plays, change how some of the weapons play.
What?
Oh my god! What?
Dan, what are you talking about?
Oh no, am I spoiling things?
Oh my god!
Yes, you are.
I have no idea. What?
Do you want me to spoil more? Because there's more. Sorry, I'm just laughing at the fact that because I got to Arcana quite a while ago.
But the joy is, I honestly have no idea how you've got there. But now I'm really excited that one day I will, and that's the joy of the game, is that, as you're saying, Dan, quite rightly, how it meters everything out. So either you're growing with the experience, like the beginning sort of first hours, or the experience is growing around you. It's just absolutely sublime. And I think that just comes from that early access time that Pete was saying. Like, I think they've gathered so much data from the people playing it. They know exactly when to make these drops to keep people involved.
I think the other thing that it makes me feel is nostalgic. And obviously partly that's the pixel art and all that sort of stuff. But actually, mostly it comes from what we've been discussing here of this idea of like, oh, you found it reminds me of those conversations where you'd be like, you found the secret level on level 4. I had no idea about that. Like, that level of discussion is just something that you very rarely get now. And I don't know whether or not this is possible. I don't want to know either until I find out for myself. But like, I have a feeling that I can cheat death in the game. I have a feeling that I think I might be able to do it, but I don't know how. And the fact is that like maybe I can't, but it feels like one of those things of like, oh, did you know that if you jump up and hold down on level 2 of Mario Brothers, then you fall through the background, you can run all the way to the end.
Just to fill people in, and Kris, because I don't know if Kris has got to see death yet, but when you reach the time limit of that set stage, death comes along and unavoidably kills you.
Yeah, kind of instant kill. And it took me a while before I realised that was what was happening.
Yeah.
And I think the thing that's the most interesting one of the most interesting things for me with this is that because it completely subverted my expectations, it wasn't just another early access game, an indie company giving it a go and using loads of words to try and sell it to a bunch of people. There actually feels like there's a lot of heart to it and to the team that's making it. So the team that's making it is a company called Poncle. Great name. And very recently there was an interview with one of them where they said, because they only recently brought it back to mobile. So it actually did go to Android quite early on, and then they took it down again because I believe they changed engines at one point, and the old mobile version just didn't keep up. But there's an interview with one of them where they were asked, why did you do the mobile version in-house? And their answer was, because we couldn't find a mobile games company that didn't want to make the monetization awful, right? And the monetization on this thing, so this is a free download, right, on mobile. You have to pay a few quid, I think it is almost nothing on,
I think I played like £3.50 for it on Steam.
Right. So, it's quite affordable. It's free on mobile, on Android, certainly. And the monetization mechanic in it is, it's the exact same game, but if you want one revive, seemingly at random, at the end when you get killed by something, you have to watch an ad. And if you want to double the gold that you get, then you have to watch an ad. But if you don't want to do any of those things, the game will never give you an advert. There are no banner ads. There's nothing. It just goes, this is purely opt-in. If you want to do this for this little bonus and reward, which, by the way, has essentially no bearing on the game whatsoever. Yeah. If you want to do that, you can.
I don't think there's another game where I've watched as many ads as Vampire Survivors, because I'm like, oh yes, right. Yes, I do want to revive. Thank you very much. Yeah. Yes, I do want another 500 coins.
No wonder he's got so far.
Yeah. But it also manages to tread that line where it just isn't pay to win. Like, you can also just get that bonus yourself. You can unlock it with coins. You can unlock this. Hey, do you want to revive once with coins as part of the actual normal mechanics of the game rather than free to play mechanics.
Mm-hmm. And what's actually really good about that is in other free-to-play games where you've got kind of a little bit pay to win, or you can get it from in-game currency. That in-game currency is at a huge level where in order to get that thing, you have to get 100,000 coins and you earn them one at a time. Like, the levels for this, like, are very much attainable. You could very quickly get a lot of the things and it will just build up and build up and build up. You don't feel like you're having to grind and grind and grind to get to the high levels.
Because it's always optional, there's never that moment where you feel the hand of the monetization expert going, and this is the point that will make them die because we've determined that we've played it for 30 minutes and now we want you to view an ad, please. Thank you very much. It never feels like that.
I worry sometimes that there's something wrong with me.
Why? I mean, we worry about that as well, but why in this one specific instance?
Because I think Vampire Survivor is a brilliant game. It's just it hasn't gripped me at all.
Yeah, but how much have you played it?
I played about 2 or 3 rounds of it.
Oh, right.
It didn't grab me.
Nah, it'll grab you when you reach a point where you get quite far.
I can see how it could grab somebody, definitely. I think it is. It's almost like a Swiss watch. It's like it's been properly machined. And I had no idea of any kind of ads or anything like that. It felt like I was playing. It felt like a treat to play a game for free that doesn't feel like it's for free, if that makes sense. Yeah. And I can see its addictive properties, that kind of hook there. Maybe it's just because I was playing it on a mobile device or something, but a bit like Marvel Snap, it didn't
That's fine.
It didn't sing to me in a particular way. And I don't know whether it's just because it's a genre, it's a type of game where I don't feel like I just want to sit down and play it. And likewise, it's not a game I want to play on the move. So I don't know where or when I would play it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, I obviously, like, I think that's totally fine that it's not grabbed you. I mean, like, some of the best games of last year that are games that I have zero interest in, right? Like, I just don't care about Elden Ring. Like, it looks great. I will never play that game. It might be worth putting a little bit more time into it, but going into it with a slightly different mindset of, this isn't a game that I play portably. This is a game that just so happens to be portable, but I am going to sit down and dedicate 20 minutes to it, or half an hour to it, or something along those lines.
But it is just that repetition, isn't it?
It is, yeah. But when you say repetition, I mean, the last game that I played, the round lasted 25 minutes. That's one life, was 25 minutes.
Okay.
So when you say, like, oh, it's that repetition, yeah, but, like, early on in the game, I found myself, my experience with the game was that I was dying quite a lot. Like, I would get like maybe 2 or 3 minutes, and then maybe 4 or 5, and then maybe 10, and now we're into like 25 minutes.
And you still stayed with it after all that?
Yeah, because I kept going and going and going with it. Go and look at the unlocks as well. Look at some of the things where you're like, ooh, actually, I'd quite like to attract orbs more quickly, or build up my experience faster, or something along those lines. Things where you feel like you're struggling, and see if there's any characters that you want to get hold of that feel different as well, right?
Yeah, I was about to say that.
If it really doesn't grab you after, I would say like another session of like half an hour or an hour or something like that, then yeah, absolutely put it down, because the game is not going to be wildly different after that. But I think I'm just flabbergasted by it. It's one of those games where I'd like them to add a little option where I can have like I can unlock a quote unquote premium mode, which is basically just like a little hat in the corner somewhere that says, thanks for spending money on this game. Like, I feel like I want to give them money because this is...
Well, you could just buy it on Steam and just...
I guess I could. Do you know what? Maybe I'll just buy it on Steam, or maybe I'll buy it on PlayStation when it inevitably comes out on there.
I think there is something in here that you would enjoy, Kris, because I find it an incredibly meditative game.
Mm-hmm. It's great.
I think, Kris, kind of the experience that you've had so far, I think if the game was just that, what you've experienced so far, I don't think, if that's all it was, I don't think any of us would have stuck with it.
No. Yeah.
So your reaction isn't kind of incorrect. And as we kind of talked about, it has these other components that get introduced, and it is kind of like almost like an onion of a game that you just peel back different layers. And like, for me, obviously it's exciting for me because I've peeled more layers to the game. Like, I'm looking at it from a much further back point than you guys are, and I'm seeing like layers below layers of this game that just haven't been revealed to you yet.
You're seeing the Matrix.
I'm seeing green. I'm seeing code
at the center of every onion,
and it's interesting for me just to kind of have that knowledge, and kind of it probably puts it a bit more in perspective for me that I'm seeing a much bigger canvas. And I love it when games do that. When it's so like I talked about Tunic before, like that whole idea of it feeling like a really small world suddenly expanding and expanding and expanding again. It's not expanding world hopes in this, but what the game is getting you to look at and getting you to do very much is expanding and then expanding again and then expanding again, and it constantly just makes you like, okay, you've got me again. I'll come back for another bite.
Do you know what? This is the first time in however many years that actually you've justified to me why we do this podcast.
What is that?
Okay, go on. Why? Because I've been having my doubts, to be honest.
Because you've recommended me something. Like, I can see how like a listener might find this useful, because like
for the previous 160 odd episodes, Kris has been a bit wavered. He's been on the fence.
But I know what we're going to talk about. So actually, here it's quite interesting. I've played some of this game, but it goes back to what Sam was talking about: the joys of actually, rather than going online and looking up something and saying, "Is this any good?" Asking your mates, and saying, well, actually, yeah, you just need to go a little bit further here. Give it a little bit more. Yeah. And that, to me, is more useful and more interesting than any other format in which I could look this game up. So I am going to go and do that. Have any of you watched Ghosts?
Yes, I have.
Kris, you were talking to me about Ghosts when you came over the other day, and it sounds dumb as fuck, but also like something I would really like to watch.
Yeah, like I put it off for so long because everyone in my family was recommending it to me, and it, as you say, Pete, it sounded a bit too chintzy and a bit too saccharine and a bit too sweet, and I wasn't really looking for that, really. It comes also from the people who did the Horrible Histories television show, which I never watched.
Oh, it's really good.
Yeah, apparently it is. Yeah. This
excellent.
is like a more adult version of them working together doing a show. So it's quite a large team, actually. The actors are also the creators of it. So Matthew Bainton, Simon Farnaby, Martha Howard Douglas, Jim Howick, Lawrence Rickard, Ben Willibond. And it's a sitcom. And I can't remember the last time I really started a new sitcom, if I'm honest, really. But it's got a really interesting premise where a character called Alison has just inherited this crumbling old mansion called Button House. And her husband, who has stupidly and rashly got a mortgage that is going to be very difficult for them to pay off, are stuck in this place. And they have this idea that they're going to renovate it and make it like a wedding events business. And unbeknownst to them, there are ghosts there that haunt this place. And they want Alison and her husband out. But then Alison has an accident, has a head injury, and then is suddenly able to see these ghosts and talk to them. And she's the only one who can see them and talk to them. And that's the premise of the sitcom. So you've got that conceit of different personalities thrown together in a location. Here, there's obviously a very spectral element to it, where the ghost physically cannot leave this place. And Alison, for economic reasons, is unable to leave this place. So they have to learn to get along with each other. And I was like, okay, yeah, right. So it's just going to be lots of kind of like basically the ghost playing Home Alone on the occupants each week, yada, yada, yada. That sounds like it'll get a bit boring. And what actually happens is these kinds of moments where you learn a lot actually about what it is to live and the value of life, and actually how Alison actually learns a lot from the shared wisdom of ghosts that have been here, some of them for thousands of years. And likewise, also, they learn from Alison what the 21st century life is like. So she'll do things like she'll put the laptop up for them and put on like a show, so they all get together and watch a show together and stuff. And actually, it is quite funny. It is a funny series, but actually, what makes it land for me is that actually there's some really lovely, poignant moments that are really, really heartfelt. And it helps when you've got such a talented degree of comedic performers who know when to not kind of just make everything a joke factory, and to kind of pull their punches and actually lean into that pathos a little bit more. So just to give you this cast of characters going through chronology, you've got Robin, who's a caveman, but he can interfere with electricity. You've got Sir Humphrey, who's a headless nobleman who just, him and his head just keep trying to look for each other basically the entire time. You've got Mary, who's a witch trial victim from the Stuart era, who, if any human walks through her, they just get the smell of burning, played by Katie Wicks.
Amazing.
You've got Thomas Bainton, who's a romantic poet who's in love with Alison and he's trying to serenade her. You've got Kitty, played by the fantastic Lolly Adefope. A lot of Taskmaster people, strangely, in this.
Yeah.
Who is just this delightful Georgian noblewoman who wants to be friends with everyone. You've got Lady Stephanie, who's a distant relative of Alison's, who is this ghost that basically at 7 o'clock every morning, she jumps out of her window and hits the garden outside every morning. So that's Alison's alarm clock, essentially. You've then got the captain, a World War II officer, an unofficial leader of the group who is desperately trying to hide his homosexuality. Then you have Pat, who was a cheerful scout leader, who one of his scouts shot him accidentally with an arrow through his neck. So he just walks around with an arrow through his neck. And he's really cheerful and he's lovely. And then you've got Julian, Simon Farnaby, who's a disgraced Tory MP who died in a sex scandal, so he constantly walks around with no trousers on. And Julian, Simon Farnaby's character, can actually touch things, so that they can interact with each other in the real world. So one of the greatest examples of an episode is where Alison goes on a night out, leaving her husband in the house alone, and he can't see the ghosts. So he just goes to bed, but in the middle of the night, they're getting burgled, and the ghosts are aware of it, and they're trying to communicate to him that they're being burgled and trying to help him without him being able to understand them. And it's a really clever kind of premise for that. And every time I keep thinking, okay, they're going to run out of ideas soon, there's always something new that appears when you learn about each of the ghosts' past, how they got here, how they've also witnessed the people that came later. They were already haunting that place, and they can tell their version of the events. It is just a lovely, sweet, innocent and heartfelt little package, really. I think it'd be right up your street, Pete. I really do think it is.
It is a really lovely kind of comedy. As we mentioned, they did Horrible Histories way back when, and that was absolutely fantastic. It was like a kids' educational show talking about history based on a number of books, the Horrible History books. But they took kind of responsibility for it and were really creative with how they did it, and used songs and used all these kind of sketch comedy for it, and it was absolutely fantastic. And they kind of became really, really popular. So when they left the show, they kind of remained as a group. They did do another show called Yonderland, which for me, I wasn't a fan of it. It was a fantasy setting, and the idea of kind of going to a fantasy world, we're using puppets and all that stuff, and it didn't really work for me. And then when this came along, it does seem to just really fit their style of humour. And you mentioned kind of character, like they're terrific character actors, and I don't mean that in a sense of, you hear people refer to as a character actor, which basically means they don't look like a movie star. These are people who are fantastic at creating proper characters, and the way that they've chosen these characters and the way they play off against each other is wonderful. Like you mentioned, kind of Mary, the victim of the witch trials. Like, she's my favourite character because her point of reference, because she is kind of uneducated and she's come from a period of time where she was victimised, is just incredible. And so when you put that up against the sex scandal Tory MP, you get a kind of glimpse into this world of, if you've got these 7 or so ghosts from different points in history, and they are basically locked together because they can't leave the grounds of this house. If they try, they just get sent back to it. If they spend eternity together, what do they do? And what they do is they have film clubs, or today we're going to have a talk, and Mary is going to talk to us about the witch trials. But actually, she doesn't feel like she's ready, even though it's hundreds of years. She still doesn't feel like she's ready, so she's not going to do it today. So the scout leader is going to talk something about camping or something like that. And it's just the comedy is so quaint. It's not, there's no real edge to it, but in a good way. Often when you say there's not an edge, that's kind of a negative. It's absolutely not the case for this. One thing I really enjoyed in it, and it struck home to me how well it's put together, is I watched some bloopers. I always like watching bloopers and outtakes, and I saw some bloopers for the show. Oh,
bloopers are great.
And obviously when you're watching this, you're seeing the characters of Alison and Mike, the kind of the two alive people, kind of, they're obviously interacting with all the actors. And when you see the ghosts interacting directly with the humans, kind of it jars a little bit. So no, you're ghosts, and then your brain has to kind of switch, no. And that tells me it's working on kind of lots of levels.
January 1st every year, Kris always kicks off with his open world video game that is going to last him probably about 6 to 9 months.
Okay.
Or 12 if you're playing Assassin's Creed Valhalla.
Yes, 12. That was a long one, definitely. So Sam very kindly lent me his copy of Horizon Forbidden West.
Oh.
Just bear in mind, Kris, that it's depreciating in value at CEX every week.
Every single minute.
No pressure, Kris.
I did say this to you. I said this to you. I said, look, mate, I feel like I should be paying you for this because I'm conscious of the fact that it's depreciating in value. And you said, oh, no,
I just want that on the back of your mind the whole time, me standing over you with a watch.
When you're questing.
Yeah.
Time is money, Kris.
Well, do you know what? I was made patently aware of it, Sam. I've played about 2-3 hours of it, and I've just got to the titles. I was like, oh, God. Okay. But I was already in the mood for it because you and I hung out, Sam, and you
Yes.
said, "Look, Chris, you can get your Horizon fix without getting any kind of screen glare." So, what do you mean? And boom, boom, on the table, you reveal from Steamforged Games.
Horizon Zero Dawn, the board game.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's just rewind just a little bit. So Horizon Zero Dawn, an action adventure open world ish game,
Yeah.
is now a board game.
Yes.
Okay.
So what they've done, I say they, the designers Sherwin Matthews, but what they have done in collaboration with Guerrilla is they've turned a part of the Horizon experience into a board game, which I think is very, very clever, because I think there's other big, bold video game board games like this, like Dark Souls and Bloodborne, where they try to simulate the whole sort of progression system and the whole sort of gameplay loop, but quite cleverly what Horizon Zero Dawn, the board game, I'll just call it Horizon from now on, because otherwise life's too short. What they did is basically they've just taken the Hunter's Lodge challenges that appear in both games and used that as the basis for the board game. So if you didn't, like me, I ignored all the Hunter's Lodges in Horizon Zero Dawn and in Forbidden West, even though apparently there's actually a really good side story with the Hunter's Lodges, but hey-ho. So what they were essentially side distractions from the main game, where you'd be tasked to hunt a particular creature in the world and then bring back its parts and exchange it. And you'd go from quite small creatures up to some of the biggest and earning bounty and rewards from that experience. So that's essentially what Horizon Zero Dawn, the board game, does. Is what you're doing is you're settling down to basically take on one of these Hunter's Lodge challenges. So Aloy doesn't appear in this game, which I think is actually also quite a shrewd move, because everyone would be just fighting over Aloy and one of the popular characters. So instead, there is one of the four factions, so like Karja and Nora and the others. And you pick one of the factions, so it plays up to 4 players. You can play it solo. And then you go on a series of escalating missions out into the wilds, the wastes of America, hunting down different Dinobots until you eventually gain enough experience to take down your big target, which in the base game is a sawtooth. So the game itself is quite a weird mixture of cooperative elements and competition, which again is kind of reflective of how the Hunter's Lodge would work in reality. You all go out and fight these animals, but really only one of you wants all the glory, which I think is probably one of its biggest downsides, because when me and Kris played it, we really just enjoyed the actual cooperative experience, which was doing what you do in Horizon, which was tracking these animals through these little miniatures, tracking these little dinosaurs through the landscape, figuring out what their weak spots were, popping out of the tall grass and hitting them with an arrow whilst you're dodging out of the way, knocking off some of their canisters so they couldn't attack you in a certain way, or just chipping away at some of their armor so they became less effective later on in the battle. And it does such a superb job of actually replicating that video game experience. Like when you first set up your character, you even have like a little weapon wheel. So you have like a picture of your avatar as a card, and then above it and to the sides, you have the weapons that you have, like a spear or a bow or a little tripcaster. So it even replicates a little weapon wheel from the video game. To fire something from your bow, you've got to play an arrow card. You can't just fire nothing. So you even have like a depleting stock of arrows, just like you do in Horizon. When you run out of cards, that's it. You're exhausted. You're out of the game unless you craft and you can put some of those discarded cards back into your deck. Again, replicating those moments in Horizon where you suddenly go to draw an arrow and you've got to find a little spot to craft some more arrows so you can get back into the field. It's, I don't know, Kris, like for me, it really felt like it was picking some of the best mechanics in Horizon and choosing those to make a board game round, rather than just trying in some way to leech off a franchise.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. Like, it didn't feel like a watered down version. It felt like a key aspect of the game had been abstracted from that. So very quickly, we were leveling up. We were getting excited, seeing, oh wow, I'll get access to this now. Very, very much like that kind of the tech tree you get in the video game, and that was really quick.
Yep.
You got to that. You also do feel, I think, that this is part of something bigger. We were walking around a convention recently in Manchester where we could see the big boxes of add-ons that you bolt onto this game as well. So you can kind of see with this kind of that typical modular structure with these kind of miniature hybrid board game things that, you could easily bolt on with, bigger kind of enemies. What I really, really love, one of my favorite things about the Horizon games is their graphic design. It's so clean and crisp, and it's beautiful, and that kind of like ancient kind of cave painting aesthetic fused with that kind of technology that comes across here into the board game. So it's a very, very attractive looking game as well, like in terms of the cards and how they look and the iconography of those cards as well, and the art. It is a very, very beautiful game, and I think one that I'd happily enjoy continuing playing. I was really getting excited about sticking with my deck and watching my particular character evolve in a particularly different way. And I think we did say that there is a cooperative variant in the rulebook, but you and I agree that actually it'd be better if the game had that as the default playing style, because it kind of got a bit irritating, because what tended to happen, Dan and Pete, was that Sam would take down this creature, and then I would just happen to be right next to what it dropped, and I would just scoop that up myself.
Yeah. It was like the equivalent of me loosening a little jar, then Kris coming along and just go and be like, well, I just took all its health points up, and you just came along and just tapped it and then stole all its stuff.
He was getting so peeved at that.
Great.
So peeved at that.
The next time we're all together, I think that it would... I think a game like this would be a real joy to play, because I feel like each of you would get something from it. Like Pete, I think you just enjoy like the miniatures experience and the art and almost this video game brought to life almost.
That's what I'm most interested in.
Yeah, and I think Dan, you'd enjoy it for the same reasons, because like I'd really like to get this in game in front of you, because it uses a lot of board game mechanics that we go on about all the time, like deck building and miniatures play and strategy. But I feel like because it's such an analog of Horizon, I think you would get it instantly. So like when you do a mission, you have like your quarry, your dinosaurs that you've got on the center of the board. You take them down, you get resources from them, just like you do in Horizon. So you get the little metal shards, or you may get like a watch or like some trinkets, I think that they're called. And then in between each mission, you go and see a merchant, and that merchant has stuff to sell, and you exchange the stuff that you found for better weapons. Like it's just deck building, but because it's Horizon, I think that it completely circumvents that feeling that you get when you deck build, because it's very clear to see, the numbers are just going up. Like my armor is getting better, or this weapon is obviously better than that weapon, so I'm just switching this out, or I just want some more ammo for my quiver. I'm not going to say that you're going to play this and then we're going to shove like, El Dorado in front of you and expect you to be like, oh, I really love deck building now, and by the way, here's Magic the Gathering.
I mean, you say you won't do that. Sounds like something you'd do. I'd be on the train on the way home and put my hand in my pocket.
An intervention.
No.
But I think what Sam means is that, Dan, like, for example, you'll get a choice of 6 cards at the end of a round, pretty much, unless you've like ranked up to the next level. And it'll be like another 6 cards, but they'll be more powerful. And even then, depending on what route you've gone along your tech tree, it won't be 6. It'll like be 3 cards you choose from. So it's just enough where you feel like this is unique to me, but by that same token, You're not spending half an hour just trying to build your deck. It's basically like, I've got to the end of a video game level now. Oh, I've leveled up. Oh, what should I pick? Oh, I'll just pick that. Boom, back to the game. It's that sensation. And I think the four of us, it would be like Lost Planet 2.
Music to my ears. Music to my ears.
Those are bold, bold words.
I can't stop thinking about Sam's V pillow. And I was just wondering, is there a letter that would make a better pillow, or is V the best letter for a pillow? Because I was thinking about an O. Can you imagine slipping yourself in the middle of an O and you're surrounded all sides by
Well,
pillow?
they do have like O pillows for infants and for babies.
Yeah.
So those do exist.
But that's to sit inside the recess of the O, isn't it? Rather than straddling the O. I think what Kris is actually wanting to be is he wants an O pillow, but he wants to turn it into a Q with his body.
Yeah.
Well, no, the easy shape is the letter C. I mean, that's easy.
Oh,
I want a D. I want a D.
Don't we all?
you want a big D?
Because I often find that I want a great big D because I love putting my head...
A big D between your legs.
Exactly. I love to fold a pillow over my head at night.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so like I have half the pillow, I've got my head on it, and then half the other pillow is like closing my eye, like
So it's like a stapler.
like over my like a
Yeah,
stapler.
but you could have But you could have a P or a B.
Yeah.
So you have the
Exactly.
shaft of the P running down your body, and then you can fold the O part over your head like a little pillow halo.
I mean, I don't know where we're going with this. Really,
I mean,
it's a dangerous road.
this episode was presented to you by the letter V. Yeah. I think if I got an I, I'd feel a bit shortchanged because that's just a draft excluder, isn't it?
J could work quite well. Could just curl round between your legs and have a nice cuddle.
Yeah, but you do that with a V.
No, that's too aggressive, Sam.
Too aggressive.
The angle's too acute.
Denigrate the V pillow at your peril, because I guarantee probably by the age of 40 or 50 we'll
We'll be doing it.
all have little V pillows going on.
Won't be able to move for them.
And they're great for your back as well. Great for your back. Mr. Motivator taught me this trick. If you should sleep with something in between your legs because it takes the weight off your back.
When you say Mr. Motivator taught you this,
Yeah.
do you mean directly, or do you mean as part of like a television program or something like that?
He was between Sam's legs at the time.
Yeah, I was gonna say like,
I was like, listen, Derek.
yeah.
I've got some lower back problems. How do I solve them out?
After he told you, did he pull the duvet up and kiss you on the forehead goodnight? Like, what? How did this work?
And surely that only works if you're lying on your side. Like, I sleep on my front.
Yeah, if you're lying on your side,
So it would be weird if I had to between my legs.
if you're lying on your side, your back is supporting the weight of your legs. So if you put a pillow in between your legs, that's supporting the weight of your legs, so your back can rest.
And this was Medical Talk, brought to you by Staying In, a one-stop shop for all your bedroom needs.
That's blown my mind.
Yeah, you should try it, Kris.
Yeah. Look, I'm looking on here. 10 best knee pillows 2022.
No, the internet's ruined. The internet is ruined.
Yeah. Yeah.
What was number one?
Actually, Kris, before we figure that out, what's the difference between 22's list and 2021's list? Because it's a really competitive market.
Yeah, what happened to number one in 2022?
God's sake.
So apparently it's not just Sam that does this, and Mr. Motivator, or Derek, sorry. Actually, this is something that is actually gives you really big health benefits. Google top searches. Why do I put my hand between my legs when I sleep?
To take the pressure off your back. Next. If you'd like us to answer questions just like that, then please do send them along.
If you've got medical related questions that you would like 4 people woefully underqualified to answer,
I think you're still overestimating our abilities there, Pete.
then stayinginpod@gmail.com can provide all sorts of non-legally binding advice.
Yes. Be careful if you're going to do it out in the open. So on social media at Staying in Pod on Twitter, Facebook, or Instagram. But we do welcome any correspondence, pillow-based or not. Basically, just get in touch with us.
However, you do need to provide the subject line "pillow talk," otherwise we will not respond to it directly. And don't sleep on leaving us a nice review and rating and telling your friends about it, because it always helps us out.
Yeah, I know I'm motivated too.
Yeah.
So you should be too now also. Thanks for Steamforged, by the way, for sending us a copy of Horizon Zero Dawn board game. I mean, I genuinely do really like it as a cooperative experience, and I think it will be a blast with us four playing it.
Did I ever tell you guys about the time I found my wife listening to our podcast fast asleep?
No.
Is there a causal link between those two things?
Was it between the legs?
It wasn't. No, it wasn't. She'd already gone to bed, and I came upstairs to go to bed, and she listens to podcasts to fall asleep. And I came in, and she was listening to our podcast, like, oh, that's lovely. Oh, I've helped her get to sleep, so I turned it off and over there. And in the morning, I was like, oh, I heard you listening to the podcast last night, and she's like, oh yeah, it came on after the one I was listening to. How do I stop that from happening? I was like, oh no. Like, oh, you were listening to my podcast? Yeah, how can I make sure that never happens again? No. So yeah.
Well, make sure you subscribe to us if you would like this to
keep happening.
Accidentally play while you're falling asleep.
No. But until next time, I think that's it from us.
Goodbye.
All right then.
Bye.
That'll do.